All right, we're going to be talking about the adverb clause. You should be listening to this after you've listened to the presentations on the independent and subordinate clause and the adjective clause, because I'm going to be going over material that I assume that you've already heard. So, to begin, the adverb clause. This is another subordinate clause, and this one, just like an adverb would, modifies a verb, an adjective, or an adverb. It can do all the things that an adverb obviously can. And just like an adverb, it answers many questions. This is often one of the things that drives students crazy, is because it can do so many things. For instance, adverb clauses answer really the following questions. They answer the question of how. You see a lot of these. When, where, why, I'll go here, to what extent, how much, how long, and under, let's see, come there, what conditions. Let's see if I got them all. How, when, where, why, to what extent, how much, how long, under what conditions. Yeah, so as you can see, many questions. Okay. Another thing you have to remember about the adverb clause is that unlike adjective clauses, which almost always appear after the word they're going to modify, which makes them very easy to identify, adverb phrases can appear throughout the sentence. Often it is stylistic choice, where you want it to appear much more so than a matter of correctness. And this is important. You can introduce the sentence with an adverbial clause, or you can end it with an adverbial clause, or you can have it interrupting the middle of the independent clause. Either way, generally it's grammatically correct. Sometimes it may sound awkward, and obviously that would not be a good stylistic choice. So let's look at a couple of things that would make an adverb clause an adverb clause. The most important thing you have to remember is that adverb clauses begin with subordinating conjunctions. And as you can see, there are quite a few subordinating conjunctions. These are the common subordinating conjunctions. This is not an exhaustive list. And rather than be scared at such a long list, you could consider the relative pronouns that begin adjective clauses and say, well, I only have to memorize those. And then everything that's not a relative pronoun is probably an adverb clause. Now, of course, later on we're going to talk about noun clauses, but let's deal with this right now. Okay, so just to be clear, the relative pronouns are, let's get down here, that, which, who, whom, whose. Right. That, which, who, whom, whose. Those are the relative pronouns. As you can see, they are not in the list of subordinating conjunctions. So therefore, you should be able to say, okay, well, that's an adjective clause, or that is an adverb clause, because it either begins with a subordinating conjunction or it begins with a relative pronoun. Okay, let's look at some sentences, and I'll show you not only how they begin, but also how they can appear throughout the sentence. Okay. I feel as though I will never catch up. Right, so obviously a common problem with students. The independent clause is I feel. I feel. It's a very simple independent clause, but nevertheless, subject-verb. That's all that matters. As though I will never catch up is a adverb clause. It's answering the question how. How do I feel? I feel as though I will never catch up. Now, just like I said before, an adverb clause can float around. You can, erase this line right here. You can move I feel to the end, and you can move adverb clause to the beginning. As though I'll never catch up, I feel. Which I have to admit, this is not the best construction, but for purposes of discussion. Again, if you have the subordinating clause first and the independent clause second, there needs to be a comma there. If the independent clause is first and then the subordinating clause is second, no comma necessary. Okay, so as though I'll never catch up, I feel. Right? It's awkward. Let's put it back. I like it better back the other way. Sometimes you have a sentence, you play with it, you realize, there we go. That's better. I feel as though I'll never catch up. Okay, let's get this one. After I finish my bookcases, I will call you. Now this is answering the question when. When will I call you? Well, after I finish my bookcases. And in this one, as you can see, the subordinating clause is first, the independent clause is second, so we clearly need a comma there. Right? That's what we're going to need. However, let's see how it sounds without it. So, I will call you after I finish painting my bookcases. You don't need the comma. It's up to you. Again, when you're looking stylistically at what should go first, often people default to what is the most important information of the sentence. Is it the fact that I will call you? Or is it the fact that I'm painting my bookcases, and that is what's going to determine when I call you? Again, it's a stylistic choice. It depends on what you're writing, and obviously who you're talking to or writing to. Let's look at the next one. I paint where there is plenty of fresh air. Well, this clearly is answering the question where, and it helps that the subordinating conjunction beginning it also is where. This is a pretty easy one to answer. Again, this can have sort of a efficient vibe. I paint where there's plenty of fresh air. It's very clear where I paint. Or you can have sort of like an artistic impression. Where there's plenty of fresh air, I paint. Which implies that, I guess, whenever you find yourself in a moment full of fresh air, that's the time you start painting. So again, stylistic choice. What do you consider to be the most important part of the sentence? Whether you paint or whether you are safety conscious. Either way, remember grammatically, subordinating clause is first. You need that comma when it precedes the independent clause. All right, so let's look at another one. I have more work to do today because I didn't paint yesterday. Now this one is answering the question why. And whenever I see a sentence like this, and how do I know it's why? Because this is what my parents will tell me. Why do I have to do this? Well, because. It's also a reason I tell my students. Why do we have to learn this? Because. So often that is a nice way of remembering this thing. So again, you can move it around where you can say, I have more work to do today because I didn't paint yesterday. Or, again, because I didn't paint yesterday, I have more work to do today. And again, I'm not entirely sure under what conditions you would choose one or the other. Again, it's a stylistic choice. But again, the most important part for our purposes of discussion, that comma. Subordinating clause first, independent clause second, comma. All right, independent clause first, subordinating clause second, no comma. Okay, the sprinters can run faster than I can. Now this one is answering to what extent. To what extent can the sprinters run? Well, they can run faster than I. The independent clause here is again one of those short and sweet ones. I can. And then, actually, no, that's not correct. It's then I can. Sorry, my bad. And in which case we have the sprinters can run faster. Well, it's a good independent clause in their own right. But of course we can move this in the back. Then I can, the sprinters can run faster. Well, that just doesn't sound good at all. So let's just put that back in the front. So sometimes you move the adverb clause around, you realize, wow, that's horrible. And sometimes you go, I like it stylistically, whatever. But the important thing to remember is independent clause comes first, subordinate clause comes second, no comma right there. No comma. Okay. I will drink espresso until the students show up for class. This shows how long I will drink espresso, which sometimes can be a long time if the students are late showing up. So we have I will drink espresso, independent clause, it's first, subordinating clause is second, there is no comma. If we want to try moving them around, let's see here, which I will drink espresso until the students show up for class, or until the students show up for class, I will drink espresso. And of course, then in this case, you are going to need that comma. Okay, let's look at another one. If I drink espresso for 2 more hours, I will achieve a higher level of consciousness. Now, this one is answering the question of under what conditions, and I would like to see if this is true, but I think I might end up with a caffeine headache before that happens, but you know, it is worth a shot sometimes, so to speak, no pun intended. Okay, let's try mixing these up. So if I drink espresso for 2 more hours, I will achieve a high level of consciousness. Now again, the independent clause, I will achieve a higher level of consciousness, is the second part of this sentence. So therefore, if we have subordinating clause first, independent clause second, we do need a comma there. And then we can see, of course, whether we like one or the other. So let's see how it looks. Always when you're dealing with style, it helps to kind of rearrange things and see if one sounds better than another. I will achieve a higher level of consciousness if I drink espresso for 2 more hours. It's about the same. Whatever. Again, you can play with it. Okay, that's the end of the presentation. As you can see, adverb clauses slightly more complicated than adjective clauses, but that you would expect from adverbs in general.